Hey guys, what's up? Sanu here. So today I'll be testing the successor of my daily driver power amplifier. KECES Audio kindly asked if I want to review the newest S125 version 2.0 that in the latest stages of its development changed its name to S300, as you can see. So yeah, this is the final version. It no longer felt like a slight evolution of the S125, but a much higher ranked power amplifier from any point of view. So how could I say no to such an opportunity to test the best shot at high-end audio? So let's check how it looks, what makes it tick, and then how it sounds. As for its looks, the wall body of S300 is actually a thick aluminum sheet that is banded at the corners with just two plates attached on top and under the unit. It has some of the nicest metal fit I've seen on any amplifiers, and I don't see a point of changing them with something better like isoacoustics, for example. The biggest change to the oldest device is that the wall top plate of the S300 is perforated with several elongated holes so that hot air would move outside of the case. Considering that S300 is dissipating double the power, it gets much hotter and of course will need a better ventilation. The power amp itself is quite big, but it's far from huge, so it could be easily integrated in smaller audio racks or even in simple TV benches like I'm using for the moment. Being a power amplifier only, you will not find remotes and volume controls with this one. There is only a power on-off button on its front plate, and that is basically it. On the back you'll find your left and right speaker terminals, a pair of unbalanced RCA balanced XLR inputs, and few switches in the middle that would be changing its working mode from stereo to bi-amp and then to bridged mode. For the last two modes you'll need two S300 amplifiers, so take that into consideration. In high bias mode it will pump 5 watts in full class A, and in low bias mode it will always work in class AB. I recommend leaving it at high bias for a warmer and denser tonality. As for the tech inside this unit, S300 is a fully discrete JFET input stage to MOSFET output stage power amplifier. It is direct coupled with no capacitors, inductors or op-amps in its signal path. It is offering first 5 watts in class A and then it moves to AB. So no matter what speakers you'd be using, be them super efficient or not, the sweetness and those natural harmonics will always carry over and be felt in your music. Its current delivery per channel increased from 30 to 45 amperes, and this fact alone is extremely important if you want to drive inefficient stand-floor speakers to their maximum. As a direct result, power consumption doubled from 500 watts on S125 to 1000 watts on S300. KECES used a single but massive 1200 watt toroidal and balanced transformer and a huge capacitance that will be filtering and storing all that power. Of course, it has DC servo circuits that will be dealing with the source noise with the help of negative feedback. It's important if you are using noisier analog or digital sources. As for the power output, it will deliver a continuous power of 130 watts per channel in 8 ohms, 240 watts in 4 ohms, and some whopping 410 watts in 8 ohms if you bridge two units working as a team. Overall, the spec sheet looks really promising, and I can't wait to have a proper listen to this amplifier. In terms of sound performance, I was so excited testing this out that I immediately called a friend of mine. He came, we unpacked this one, I've swapped that S125 with this one, and a longer listening session started for about half a day. So at first we were underwhelmed, sincerely, so the sound was simply too upfront, too close and personal. It was gentle, it was soft sounding, dynamics were nowhere to be found. But everything sounded very transparent, so very detailed, very clean sounding in a way. It sounded tiny and quite claustrophobic, and Soundstage wasn't pushed very far, so to say. We were searching for some body hits, for some impact, but those were simply missing in action. So we both knew that a longer period of burn-in will be needed, and that is exactly what I've done. In the end, it would take about 1 month before it started blooming on me, so offering a lot of technicalities, but also a lot of huge dynamic swings, even surpassing the performance of the S125. So 2 months passed and I've again called my friend. It was last Saturday and we again listened to a lot of tracks for about half a day. Everything ranging from classical, jazz, blues, electronica, even some symphonic metal. So we started searching for some obvious flaws, for some cons with these ones, with some limitations, and we've tried really hard, but in the end we both remained really impressed by the performance of this one. And when I've added that benchmark HP for in the chain working as a preamplifier, and then I changed that Matrix Audio Element X working in its streamer mode plus DAC mode, driving some high-end KEF reference-free loudspeakers that you see behind me, I was simply stunned by how much tighter everything sounded, so how much more detail simply entered my room. Bass notes were very impressive, so much tighter sounding. They were faster sounding, more visceral, more impactful sounding compared to the S125. It was crystal clear sounding all the time, so yet there was a lot of color in my music, a higher contrast, there was warmth in the mid-range, huge impactful bass notes, and some very defined trebles without being sharp or bright sounding. And sincerely, this is the cleanest sounding power amplifier that I've tried at my place. In terms of noise floor, you should know that S300 is simply receiving a lot of helping hands at repelling noise, any kinds of noise, not only mains noise. So first aid comes from the costlier power lines that I have implemented at this place. Second help comes from the Matrix Audio Element X, because when it's working in the streamer mode, any issue that is can be attributed to the USB connection, like timing errors, jitter errors, would be not an issue anymore. And the last line of defense comes from none other than the S300 itself. So its internal DC servo circuits will be dealing with any kind of noise, be it from the source noise, be it from the mains noise, with the help of negative feedback, and that is really cool, really amazing. I have tested this one in 3 different loudspeaker setups, from which 2 of them were high-end. And from all of them, the S300 simply came out as the cleanest sounding power amplifier with absolutely zero noise coming out of my speakers. This amplifier is also having an AC turn-on inrush surge protection, an overload and over temperature protection, so it already works as a small passive power conditioner if you ask me. I've compared S125 with the S300 and also with the KECES Studio EX M7. That you can check my review somewhere around here, I think. And S300 was simply the best at repelling any kinds of noise, so it was simply dead silent at my place. I simply approached those speakers, I pushed the volume much higher, close to the max, and still there was simply nothing coming out of those speakers. There is nothing I dislike more in my music like a muddy sounding unit that increases distortion and noise floor. Luckily, S300 is neither of that, and as of right now is the cleanest power amp I have tested. Transient response, as always, is my favorite part to talk about, since it directly impacts my mood level for the rest of the day. I simply dislike slow and boring sounding amplifiers. I'm more about the speed, I'm more about the impact, and especially while listening to modern tunes where engagement factor is absolutely everything. So I'll tell you from the start that from all power amplifiers, all integrated amplifiers that I have tried in the span of 10 years, this one delivers the most current output, so it has 45 amperes per channel peak current, and that translates into the hardest slamming power amplifier that I have ever tried at my place. While KECES Studio EX M7 and to some degree KECES S300 weren't slouches in this department because they both sounded really fast and engaging, S300 simply dialed up all that, so speed and kick to 11. So the best driver control that I have experienced at my place was with S300, as long as the speakers will be receiving the right amount of power from this one. You should know that this one delivers only 130 watts in 8 ohms, and it has a max power of 240 watts for some short dynamic swings. However, this is a very potent type of power. It's a high quality type of power, mostly because of its extremely high current output and also of its direct couple design. So I've tried 3 distinct loudspeakers with this one. So first of all, it was those Buchard S300 loudspeakers, then KEF reference free loudspeakers that you see behind me, and at a friend's place I've tried some Sonus Fabor Concerto Domus. And I've experienced quite possibly the best driver control of those speakers, the nicest impact in the chest, and by far the highest mood lifting performance of them all. There were several people that came for a listen, and we all agreed that S300 was the snappiest and the fastest of them all. As for transparency and resolution, this thing is lacking op-amps. It doesn't have capacitors, inductors in its signal path. It's simply transparent sounding and as close to the source material as possible. So there wasn't a time when I felt that something is missing in my music. On the contrary, actually, S300 was able to show me more details, more nuances in my music, so without staying in the way of the music. I do believe that in this regard, S300 simply outperformed my former integrated and power amplifiers as Hegel H190, Cambridge Audio Azure 151A, a lot of lower tier stuff, and I think it even approaches the performance of the KECES Studio EX-M7, which I really liked. Again, I'm reminding you that S400 is a direct coupled amplifier, and except for those GFETs at the input stage and those MOSFETs at the output stage, nothing will alter its voicing and its sound signature. If you care a lot about transparency and about details, I do think you should take a look at DC coupled amplifiers, direct coupled amplifiers with negative feedback. I've again compared several amplifiers with the help of a few reference recordings just to arrive at the same conclusion that S300 together with the KECES EX-M7 was simply the cleanest sounding of them all. I'm quite interested in trying that benchmark AHB2 that is known to be among the cleanest sounding amplifiers, but until that happens, S300 reigns supreme in here. As for Soundstage and Depth, all 3 loudspeakers that were tested on this amplifier are simply shining in terms of scale, in terms of soundstage size. Even those Buchard S400 loudspeakers sounding really extended, really well spread on a nicer amplifier. S400 are indeed peaky and would not sound the same on all amplifiers, but in all honesty, only very few amplifiers sounded really good, were able to tame its low end and control it with an iron grip. But once you connect a nicer amplifier, a speedier, snappier amplifier like this one that can push bigger amounts of air in the room, it's like the sheer size of those speakers are simply increasing as well. An amazing driver control always leads to better transparency, and a higher transparency always leads to a clearer image and to a better soundstage size. So all these words are interconnected in some ways, and you should also remember that those 5 watts in class A are also playing a key role in pushing more air in the room and simply filling the gaps in the room with more air, with more density, and so on. Bottom line is that S300 will be adjusting to your tunes, to your gear, and of course to the room acoustics. It will sound big, extended, separating the notes from each other with well-mastered music, and vice versa, decreasing the room size, pushing you closer to the music, creating an intimate performance with some other tunes. In terms of frequency response, with the KEF reference free that you can see on the back, bass was extremely strong. And while on the paper these speakers are not going to the lowest octaves, I felt all that energy really very impactful, very punchy, but also controlled and really grippy. I don't think I have ever experienced more bass in my room. It was a nimble and a fast executed type of bass without lingering for a microsecond longer. And S300 provided a linear type of bass, yet it was snappy, it was impactful all the time. Mid bass felt exactly the same, and in all honesty, I think I had a little bit too much of it. But an acoustic treatment will be coming very soon, and I hope to solve the light issue I have with the lowest frequencies. Mid-range felt meaty and full of substance most of the time, so it carries just a heavier tonality. Male and female voices were rendered extremely well, and I'm pretty sure that those 5 watts of full Class A power are also aiding the mid-range performance quite a lot. I wish more amplifiers would have such an imposing and full-sounding mid-range as 300 is having. I never felt a trace of thinness or dryness in the mid-range. That actually never happened with the S300. There was just a small increase in the mid-range presence that simply added more body and soul into my music, but only by a very small portion, so it was just a little bit warmer and soul-grabbing sounding in here. Treble performance is changing quite a lot depending on the track that you'll be listening to, but first and foremost it will always be clean sounding, very extended even past top octave. And generally speaking, all KEF speakers that I have tried before are extremely precise in the treble region. Even the smallest details were perceived without stressing myself too much, without closing my eyes. S300 would not push the treble to the bright side, but in the same time it will not limit the treble performance in any way. While treble was sharp and quite defined, with tracks filled with a lot of tambourines, with a lot of bells, with a lot of cymbals, it never appeared to me as sibilant or edgy sounding. So imagine just a clean treble delivery without sacrificing detail, texture and naturalness. And that is pretty much how S300 sounded in the treble. I also did a comparison with its smaller brother S125 power amplifier, but for that please check my written review that I put below and also somewhere around here. It's on chapter 8 and it's one click away. As for the conclusions, the component selections is really top-notch in this amplifier. Its working principle is most probably the best compromise in terms of sound quality and how much power it consumes. I'm now a believer in Class A/Class AB amplifiers, and I really have no desire to try efficient but boring sounding Class D amplifiers. I know that a day might come when a Class D amplifier will impress me deeply, but that is not today, my friends. I'm yet to experience the same control of the drivers, that grip that it had in the lowest octaves, and that detailed yet free of any brightness treble performance. In my view, S300 is a high-end power amplifier, and as such it was priced accordingly. It will cost you 3,000 euros in Europe or 2,800 bucks in USA, but considering its immaculate performance on all fronts, I will be offering my highest golden award. It really deserves one. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review is waiting on my website. In case you want to support the channel, please subscribe to it, and as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers guys, bye bye.